You know that voice in your head, the one that's always on, that private little conversation that's running in the background of your mind? We all have it. But what if that inner chatter isn't just background noise? What if it's actually the most powerful creative force in your entire life? Well, we're about to dive into a fascinating idea that says it is. Just think about that for a second. What if that internal monologue, the one that worries and argues and dreams and doubts, what if it's literally writing the script for what's going to happen to you next? It's a pretty wild idea, and it kind of challenges us to pay very close attention to what we're telling ourselves, day in and day out. So to really wrap our heads around how this could even work, we have to start with the hidden power of what the source material calls our inner speech. At the heart of this is a concept called a mental diet. And look, let's be real, trying to stop talking to yourself is like trying to stop breathing. It's just not going to happen. So the idea isn't to silence that voice, but to become its director, to consciously choose what it says and where you let it lead you. And this right here is where it gets really interesting. The claim is that our circumstances, our successes, our failures, our relationships, they don't cause our inner talk. Nope, it's the other way around. Our private internal conversations are actually the cause of everything we experience in our world. Okay, so if our inner word is truly creating our outer world, how does that even work? What's the mechanism? Well, the source material explains it with this really powerful metaphor, the idea that there are two different selves living inside of each of us. And here they are, the two paths we can choose. On one side, you've got what's called the old man. That's basically our default negative conversation. It's the inner critic, the worrier, the voice that replays arguments and just expects the worst. But then on the other side, you've got the new man. And this self, it's born from an intentional, renewed conversation that's aligned with what we actually want to create. And get this idea is ancient. This quote from the Hermetica suggests that the divine power of creation really lies in these two gifts we all have, mind and speech. And it says that if we use them right, we're basically like the immortals. Wow, that really gives a sense of weight to our everyday thoughts, doesn't it? And this leads to such a critical point. Your mind and your inner speech are totally linked. They're not separate things. They're two sides of the same coin. And what that means is you can't really change your mind or your beliefs until you first change the words you are consistently using inside your own head. The speech comes first. Now, I know this can all sound a little abstract, so let's look at a concrete story from the source material that shows exactly how this principle plays out in the real world. So the story starts with this young woman who is just completely convinced that her employer is unfair. In her mind, no matter what she does, he finds fault. This is her rock-solid reality, and it's the conversation she's having with herself all day long. So she gets some pretty unusual advice. She's told to stop having these mental arguments with her boss. Instead of replaying his criticisms over and over, she's supposed to start imagining entirely new conversations. Conversations where he's actually praising her work and thanking her for being so kind. And what happened next it's just fascinating. Her employer's behavior completely flipped. He started praising her work exactly like she had been imagining. The key insight here is that his behavior had always just been an echo of her inner conversations. She was the one writing his script the whole time. And this story just perfectly reveals the core principle. Our persistent assumptions literally create our reality. It doesn't even matter if an assumption is false to begin with. If we persist in it, if we keep repeating it in our inner conversations, it will eventually harden into fact. The external proof will always follow our beliefs. It never, ever comes first. So this brings us to the most important question of all, right? How can we actually use this? How do we apply this principle to consciously change our own state and our own circumstances? Well, the source lays out a really clear four-step process. First, you have to get crystal clear on your ideal. What is it you really want? Second, you have to assume the feeling of that wish already being a reality. Third, and this is so crucial, you have to start having the inner conversations you would be having if it were true. And fourth, you persist. You just keep living in that new mental space. The whole process really boils down to this one point of agreement. You know how the prophet asked, "Can two walk together except they be agreed?" Well, in this case, the two that have to agree are your desired state and your inner speech. Your internal world has to perfectly match the external world you want to create.
When you really start to think about it, the day-to-day implications of this are just profound. This isn't just some technique you use once in a while, it's a completely different way of living your life, consciously.
We tend to think our thoughts just sort of disappear, that they just fade away into the past. But according to this principle, they don't. They actually march forward. They advance into your future, where they will eventually show up as the circumstances and events of your life.
It kind of brings to mind that powerful instruction, I have set before you this day life and good, death and evil. Choose life. In a very real way, every inner conversation presents us with that exact same choice. We can choose speech that leads to life and good, or speech that leads to outcomes we don't want. The choice is always, always ours.
So ultimately, your future isn't something that just happens to you. It's something that is being formed right now by the words you're whispering to yourself in secret. The power is completely yours, which really just leaves one question. What are you going to tell yourself today?